Hi, my name is Riley, and I'm going to be doing Chapter 6, Constructing and Interpreting Graphic Displays of Behavioral Data. The objectives are to list the 7 benefits of graphic displays of behavioral data, to identify the graphs used by applied behavior analysis, and to label the basic parts of the pictured line graph. As behavior analysts, one of the most important jobs we do is documenting and quantifying behavior change by observing the repeated measurement of behavior, and the product of these measurements is called data. So I thought the definition of data would be an important part of this presentation. Another important term is going to be graphs. Graphs make it very easy for us to visually display the data we've taken, the relationships between a series of measurements, and the relevant variables. This is going to be the definition. So getting back to our objectives, the 7 benefits of graphs. Number 1 is graphing behavior as it is collected provides a researcher with an ongoing visual record of the participant's behavior, allowing treatment and intervention with immediate access to their visual records. And number 2, direct and continual contact in an easy-to-understand format enables a professional to identify and examine deviations in behavior as they occur. Number 3, graphs are easy to learn, read, compare, and study. Number 4, visual analysis is a conservative method for determining the significance of behavior change. Number 5, graphs encourage independent conclusions of the implication and importance of behavior change by others. Number 6, they can also serve as effective sources of feedback to the people whose behavior they represent. And number 7, graphs facilitate communication, dissemination, and comprehension of behavior change among a wide variety of recipients. So the second objective is types of graphs that a behavior analysis use. The line graph is the most commonly used format for graphic display of behavioral data. Bar graphs, or the histogram, is a simple and adaptable format for graphically summarizing data. Bar graphs sacrifice the presentation of the variability and trends in the data in exchange for the efficiency of the summarizing and comparing large amounts of data in a simple, easy-to-interpret format. The cumulative recorder is a device that automatically draws a graph of a subject's rate of behavior. A ratio scale is equal vertical distances correspond to equal ratios of change in the variable being measured. Because behavior is measured and charted over time, which progresses in equal intervals, the horizontal axis is marked off in equal intervals, and only the vertical axis has a ratio scaling. Scatter plots is another one. They're graphic displays that show the relative distribution of individual measures in a dataset with respect to the variables depicted by the x and y axis. Data points on a scatter plot are unconnected with no lines. The horizontal axis and the vertical axis, I think we're all familiar with. The horizontal is going to be this line here, and the vertical is here. The horizontal axis is also called the x-axis. It's a straight horizontal line that most often represents the passage of time and presence, absence, and or value of the independent variable. And the vertical axis, also called the y-axis, is the vertical line drawn upward from the left-hand end of the horizontal axis. The vertical axis most often represents a range of values of the dependent variable. which in applied behavior analysis is always some quantifiable dimension of behavior. Axis labels are brief descriptions of the dimension represented by and scaled along each axis, most often a response measure on the vertical axis and experimental conditions across time on the horizontal axis. So that's going to be these words here. I wrote sessions and I wrote hits per minute to give you an example. We have my title here, condition change lines and condition labels. Condition change is the vertical lines drawn upward from the horizontal axis to show points in time at which changes in the independent variable occurred, and condition labels, which are single words or brief descriptive phrases printed along the top of the graph and parallel to the horizontal axis. These labels identify the experimental conditions in effect during each phase of the study. So the condition change lines are going to be these dotted lines that I drew in the middle of the graph. And the labels are going to be at the top where I wrote baseline and blocking to give you an example. Data points and the data path are on this page. The data points are, each data point on a graph represents two facts: a quantifiable measure of the target behavior recorded during a given observation period, and the time and or experimental conditions under which that particular measurement was conducted. And the data path is connecting successive data points within a given condition with a straight line, creating a data path. The data path represents the level and trend of behavior between successive data points and is a primary focus of attention in the interpretation and analysis of graph data. So the data points are going to be the little dots, obviously, and the lines are going to be the connecting lines in between. Last but not least is the figure caption. This is a concise statement that, in combination with the axis and condition labels, provides the reader with sufficient information to identify the independent and dependent variables. It should explain any symbols or observed but unplanned events that may have affected the dependent variable and point and clarify any potentially confusing features of the graph. You can compare this to like a key on a map, which is what I thought of when I read it. Pretty plain and simple when you think about it. So I covered all three of the objectives that I stated in the beginning, and good luck on your quiz.